Testing, testing.
Oh, remember the old, where the little stamped letter that was going to hit the ribbon at the end of an arm?
Yeah.
Well, if you hit two of them that were close together
They were going to hit.
at the same time, whatever,
And you were too fast, they hit.
they'd
And they
cross and
caught.
like hit each other. So, thank you.
Yep, so is mine.
So,
Weighs about 40 pounds.
everything in here came from JC?
Yeah.
I mean, this is good.
No. That is not true.
Oh, okay. Well, this has got to be all you, right? Because
Yeah, I can do 463. I guess you're going to do 464 unless you want me to do that.
no.
463 and the changes to 464 were initiated from AEA members and predominantly from the evaluation committee. So that's how we did it. And the evaluation committee is the AEA side of the EJC, pretty much.
Okay.
There are other people in there, but predominantly, representatives of the evaluation committee, the JC with a control. So. You can't breathe through the, they get me. But when I do those, first of all, it kept slipping. It kept slipping down when I was doing the training, and I was doing this the whole time doing that. And then the inside of the cotton thing kept going on rockers. I'm trying to talk, and it was like, and I was like, so I went back to this, even though it's hot, I at least can talk it, and it doesn't slip.
I wore one of those.
Sweat to death. So probably the best one are those medical ones. I need a kid size.
Andrew? Andrew? Hey, you remember where the mic stand is up?
Mike, do we have the mic stands somewhere stashed? Thank you.
Yeah, I put one of mine in the dryer. The new
The
training one.
adjustments to the two that we pulled out of that.
Great, thank you.
Kind of shrunk.
What's that?
They said I took one of the new thing and I put it in the dryer. But it kind of did so much.
Matt, you have a copy?
Yeah, I'm just signing the other one.
Great, thanks.
How much slack you can give me? I'll give you all of it.
Yeah, right on, thanks. It's okay, Karen, you said to trust him. He said to trust him.
Thanks.
haven't sent these yet. I haven't sent hers yet. Okay, you ready to go? All right,
Yes.
so we're back. We left yesterday with the understanding that AEA would open 463 and 464. We are prepared to do that. AEA is holding Article 423, which the district gave to us. That's the emergency closure article the district gave to us back as a book yesterday. We were working on a counter for that. And yesterday, I think the district said they were going to come back today and introduce Article 120. I understand that there's been a change. Maybe you could speak to that, Matt.
Right. Emailed earlier today, intent instead to introduce Article 601 and time permitting 605.
Okay. I guess it would be my preference that we would start on 463, 464. It's kind of short notice on the 601, 605. So if that gets pushed to next week, I don't think that would hurt our feelings too much. But we also have, I believe you hold 404 and 506. So maybe today we could get those cleaned up too and get them taken care of and done. So if it's okay with everyone, we'd start in on 463.
Yes.
Okay.
You want me to go?
Oh, sure, absolutely.
All right.
Yeah, Debbie's going to run us through 463.
Okay, most of the changes to 463 are updates so that the contract language reflects what's accurately and currently happening. So in A, we have been working with the district jointly to provide an orientation program. For the last 3 years, we have been working on an orientation program that was face-to-face on Tuesdays and Thursdays for about a half a day for new hires, and as well as developing a whole induction program that sort of tracks new hires for the first 3 years and provides some support. And the mechanism that we have had in place for probably over 20 years is the Educational Excellence Joint Committee, or EEJC. And that joint committee between AEA and ASD oversees and monitors the orientations, the inductions, the mentor programs. So trainings are provided for those programs. They're updated, evaluated by the EEJC jointly. AEA and ASD have an evaluation support coach program. It's gone through a couple different titles. And so we just wanted to make sure that we updated the language to reflect that the EEJC is overseeing the mentor program, the evaluation support coach. In the past, sometimes it was called the instructional coach program, and then that got confused because AEA ASD had an instructional coach program, so we updated the title. There has been a collegial cohort program for a while. I don't think it was in the contract. And most recently, we have a building induction liaison program. And so we added those to the contract because all of those are the things we've been working on together for years, and most recently, the induction program. So the bulleted points, they include the mentor program, the evaluation support coach program. Then we added language to reflect the collegial cohort program, which we've had. And then most recently now we have a building induction program for teachers for 1 to 3 years, as well as fourth year teachers who are new to district or new to a building. And together there is a development of training application process for the building induction folks. Forms, we do joint advertising, we've done joint swag, as a matter of fact, t-shirts and lanyards and all of that, so we added that. And then lastly, the development of trainings and advertising for evaluation support coach program, so we just added that. And then I think the only other significant change is D. The district provides money for the evaluation support coaches. They are paid to help folks that are on plans of growth and plans of improvement. And because we have seen a spike in the amount of plans, we have also had a spike in the amount of coaches. And for the last couple of years, AEA has run out of money to pay for those coaches, and ASD, when we asked for more money, did supply that. So there hasn't been a problem with ASD making sure that they paid for the coaches, but since we did in fact run out of money for the last couple of years, we asked for an increase of $5,000 just to make sure that we have enough money to pay for coaches. Okay, I think that's it.
Thank you.
For those changes.
One question, kind of on the, well, I'll just, I guess, start from the end and work my way back. You mentioned running out of money the last couple of years. What is that, the proposed $15,000, what is that intended for?
To pay for more coaches. So I believe the coaches are paid $50 an hour, and they're assigned for 10 hours of coaching, and if more coaching is needed, they're increased to 20 hours, and then that's it. And so we have, we would assign coaches, assign them hours, and then because there were more plans, then we ran out of money to hire coaches. So we just need to hire some more coaches. And that money was granted. It wasn't a problem to get it. The coaches were paid for. But we just because people change and are different, we didn't want to have the feeling that we were going to need coaches and no money to pay for them.
Okay, thank you.
Mm-hmm.
And who's the coordinator of that program on the AEA side?
Of the
Evaluation support coach program.
Aaron Donahue Boyer.
And how's she compensated, do you know,
She is compensated by contract.
with,
Peggy Rankin, talent management.
so that's outside of the 15,000?
Yes.
Okay. How much does she get, do you know?
You know, I don't know.
And then, thank you for that. Then there's the additional 25,000 for mentors. Is that amount sufficient, so it doesn't need to be adjusted from AEA's perspective?
That's my understanding,
Okay.
yes.
Thank you. I did have one question about the, under paragraph B, working, again, back from the end of the article toward the beginning. There's it underscored and in bold, it says mentor evaluation support coaches will not emphasize, but I think that's the current contract language.
Correct. I don't know if it was a typo, and that's why it was bold and underlined, or just if it got moved from some other place just to, yeah.
The committee wanted it emphasized, they feel like it wasn't emphasized.
Oh, okay.
Before, so
All right.
that's the rest.
Okay, well, that's, okay, that kind of messes up the thing. Okay,
So if I heard that
that's book
the
language.
committee wants it's book, but the committee wants
Wanted
to
it
change book
emphasized.
to emphasize.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yep. Yeah. It doesn't fit with the contract format, but
Okay.
that's okay. Sorry. Yeah.
And then I noted in the again working toward the top of the page, the paragraph that talks about and there was a change from the initial proposal with the supplement, and there was an additional paragraph added there that says the development of trainings and advertising for the evaluation support coach program under AEA ASD EEJC will be done jointly. But then it says the development of the application approval and forms as well as documentation will be maintained by AEA. And I just wondered why the distinction there of no joint effort.
They do it jointly, but the way the mentor program works is that's kind of more housed on the ASD side through MentorClick. And so, and that's a relatively new program as well. But mentors were paired through teaching and learning, and the mentor training was done more by ASD. And the evaluation support coach, even though the training was shared and done jointly, is done by AEA's evaluation committee. And so those forms they create and they do, and then Erin matches from the pool of coaches that we have, matches those people. The requests come in and go to Erin, and she matches them up with coaches. So that's just kind of how we've always done it that
Okay.
way. Yeah.
And then you mentioned the collegial cohort program's not currently in the contract, nor is the bills program.
Right.
And they're added here to I don't want to misquote you, but to capture what is actually occurring. My understanding is the bills program is fairly active, and I believe there's that's been an ongoing effort. Can you talk a little bit more about the collegial cohort program and what the current state of that program is?
Yeah, the collegial cohorts have actually, I don't want to misspeak here because I don't maybe have all the history on this, but it's been around for a long time. And typically, there is a trained person that leads that cohort group. They're paid an addenda. They have to go through the mentor program to qualify for that. And so let's say, for example, nurses wanted to get together and have a cohort group to improve practice and so forth. So I believe they apply for that through either MentorClick or through the Frontline system, and then a cohort is selected, and then that group meets. The only person paid in that is the Colegio cohort, and I think we have 10 of them, 10 or 11 of them. And so they're kind of initiated by the desire of people to get together and improve practice. And that whole application process, monitoring them, addenda, all of that is monitored by EEJC, both AEA and ASD.
Okay, thank you. I don't think I have any other questions. Any questions from the ASD team about this article? Not seeing any. Okay, thank you.
Is the 463 different from what we, that's the same one we gave me another one tonight? We gave him another one tonight?
We haven't done 460 yet.
Okay. 464, evaluation procedure. We have just a few changes to the book language. In paragraph A of evaluation procedure, we have added the language at the end of the paragraph. Last sentence says, no member will be evaluated in an area outside of his/her certificated area. In paragraph B, part 1, we've added a bit of language. So now the entire part 1 would read, non-tenured members shall receive a minimum of 1 formal written observation with pre and post observation conferences no later than the end of first semester. A second observation may be formal or informal and will occur prior to February 15th. The evaluation shall be completed no later than February 15th. And there's a little bit more book language on 1, but that's the new language has been covered. In paragraph B, part 3, we have several new sentences in there. So the entire paragraph would read in our proposal, a formal observation is an observation within the workplace based on educator performance. It is prearranged according to a mutual date and time, includes a pre-post conference observation conference, is documented using the agreed upon written post-observation document, and the documentation is shared with the employee during the post-observation conference. Any informal post-observation documentation will be shared shortly after the informal observation, and the member will be notified that the documentation exists. And finally, in paragraph I, at the very end of the article, there's a couple new sentences at the end of the paragraph. So the entire paragraph in our proposal would read, additional evaluation information and procedures are found in the AEA ASD Certificated Employee Evaluation Document available on the ASD and AEA websites. In order for the SEED to remain up to date, for issues to be clarified and errors to be corrected, the AEA Evaluation Committee will meet quarterly with ASD unless both sides feel a meeting is not needed or if meeting more often is necessary. So that's our, those are our changes to Article 464 evaluation procedure. I think they're probably fairly straightforward. I know the district has also opened that article and may have questions about what we've done or may want to introduce their version of this now.
Thank you. I do have questions. What's the intent with the additional sentence in paragraph A?
You want to speak to that, Debbie?
Yeah, the intent was that we had a clear understanding in the SEED for a long time that members would only be evaluated in their content area, the areas that they were certified in. We wanted to move that language from the SEED into the contract. And we did have some concerns this year with people not teaching in their certified areas and then being evaluated in those areas. And we've had discussions with you about that concern. So far, we haven't had problems with it, but there is a potential for a Chinese immersion teacher, for example, to be asked to teach, PE or math or something else in an area they're not certified and then get evaluated in it, and that sets them up for a disadvantage.
Okay, thank you. Was that atypical from prior years in terms of the response to the pandemic? Do you know, or?
Yeah, up until this year, we have not had people being evaluated in areas that they weren't certified in. That's why we had that discussion and it was added to the SEED, so that everybody was clear that when evaluations occurred, they would occur in the time and in the subjects that you were certified in.
Okay.
Observations, excuse me. Observation, sorry. Slip at the tongue there.
Yeah, thank you.
Yep.
I would just like to add that even prior to this last year, when the law changed and the certification requirements became different when NCLB went away and we're under ESSA now, that changed, that kind of opened the door a little bit more with DEED, and I'm not a big authority on this, but it did allow for the opportunities for there to be assignments that were outside of an individual's certification. So like last week, talking with a science teacher who has been assigned a section of social studies for next year, this language just says that, the social studies is not what they get their observation in, because they're just stepping up and filling a need that needs to be filled, but that's not their area of expertise and certification and so forth.
So the way this reads, it doesn't sound like it's consistent with the intent, and that is that the intent is really focused on content area, but the way I read this, it could be construed as that, using the example that was given, a Chinese immersion teacher who's teaching PE would still not be evaluated in classroom management or other offstage issues in like domain 4 areas. So I guess I just want to kind of hone in on, is this really a domain 1 Danielson area of concern, or is it broader than that from the association's perspective?
I don't know that you can just, I just don't know that you can pull it out like that.
Well, let me see if I can be a little more specific in my example. Let's say the hypothetical teacher is in a classroom instructing, and the the notes in the evaluation suggest that there was a lack of classroom management with respect to this observation. And I'm wondering what about that content area knowledge influences the instructors, the educators being evaluated in that, or observed and ultimately evaluated in regard to areas outside of content. I guess I don't see the connection.
If I could, the classroom observation on stage, a great amount of that quality instruction has to do with engaging learners in creating an environment of respect and rapport. And I agree with you that classroom management and respect and rapport is key. You should know your students first, and I absolutely agree with you on that. But about 50% of that is understanding how to create questions, questioning strategies. I believe that's part of the main stage. And also key vocabulary, scaffolding, and teaching vocabulary. And it's very challenging for an educator who's not from that area to be able to really grasp the vocabulary if it's their first time teaching content in that subject. So I would agree with you there that classroom management, respect and rapport is very important. But in my judgment, the other 50% of the on-stage assessment is understanding how to pre-teach vocabulary, engage learners, creating an environment for learning and mastery, and some of the things that really connect with content knowledge.
Well, that, I guess, underscores my concern that this appears to be creating barriers to observation and ultimately evaluation across domains in the case that the assignment that we've been talking about hypothetically occurs. So I appreciate the clarification. We'll give that some further thought. My next point, I guess, was...
I'm sorry, hey, Matt, could I speak to that real quick? I think, when this language is crafted, I didn't craft it, but my impression, thinking back on my experience, it was, I was reflecting on the times that when I was asked by an administrator to teach a course that was outside of my comfort a little bit, or outside of my area of expertise. The assumption that I made when I first looked at this language was that this is one of those deals where you're doing the administrator a favor. You're stepping in when they don't have somebody else that can handle that class, that course. And it's not it's nobody's first choice in the situations that I was thinking of. Yeah, it'd been great if they'd had another physics teacher, but they didn't have another physics teacher. They asked me if I could cover one section. So, I'm probably pretty adequate at the math end of things. Why would you want to observe me in a one-off physics class that I've taught once in 25 years? If you could watch me work in a math course that I'm which is kind of what you hired me for. It just seems odd that you would be interested in wanting to evaluate someone in there that you have asked to work in an area outside of their expertise.
Okay, I understand what you're saying, but I also heard, just in response to my question, that this concern seems to have arisen out of conditions related to the pandemic and certain assignments occurring that might not otherwise have occurred. And what I initially heard was that the concern, and what I remember from earlier conversations this year, was the concern around that person not being familiar with content. But what I'm hearing emerge from this conversation is that there might be concern from the association in the case of such assignment, even in areas unrelated to content knowledge, but in areas such as classroom management, maybe even communicating professionalism among that instructor and colleagues, with interacting with parents, across the domains. And so I just want to be crystal clear what the intent is, because if the intent is to focus on unfamiliarity with content language, I think that's a non-issue, because it's not been an area of concern raised through the evaluation process that I'm aware of, and what I just heard in terms of a plan of growth or plan of improvement related to somebody being called out for essentially not understanding the particular content, and they didn't have any say in the matter. The narrative would go in the assignment to begin with. So if it's not an issue in domain one, and I think the only domain one issues that I'm aware of typically are around lesson plans, but I'm sure there are others. But if it's not been an issue this year, then I can't imagine it being an issue in the future. And if it's the intent to broaden that focus to the other domains, then I have even more concern.
So I want to go back a little bit to what Val said. Part of the reason we had that in the seed and we want it now was under NCLB, teachers were not allowed to teach out of their highly qualified area. So if you were highly qualified in math, you weren't told to pick up a section of social studies. And when NCLB went away, then people could do that. And we didn't want people evaluated during that section that they taught something outside of their area that they were certificated in or had knowledge in. And what happens oftentimes on onstage areas, if you have classroom management issues, you sometimes wonder, okay, what's causing that? Is it causing that because you're not engaging your students and teaching the content properly? Or is it because you don't have structures in your classroom to have good classroom management? So those areas go hand in hand. So it could very well be that somebody asked to teach a section of social studies that's not their area whatsoever, that they're teaching it in a way that is not engaging the students, and it's causing classroom management issues. So I don't know, that's why when you want to pull it apart and go, we just won't judge you on how well you know X subject, but it affects every other aspect of that evaluation. So we want people evaluated in the areas that they are, that they went to school on, that they are certificated in. We don't use the word highly qualified anymore, but same idea.
Okay, thank you. I think I understand the intent. I began to reference that I didn't hear you talk about it, and I'm not saying it was intentional, but I did note in a couple of places that reference to plan of professional growth is added to the reference to the statutorily creature of statute, which is plan of improvement, and I see that in B1 and in D. I guess that's a standalone. So I did notice that inclusion. Wanted to ask you about the reference in B1 to a second observation, maybe formal or informal, and will occur prior to February 15th. And my question is it the association's position that 2 formal observations are required before putting an educator on a plan of improvement or growth? And so I guess my question would be, what would the association's position be if those contractually required observations occurred before February 15th, that is, for a non-tenured teacher, that is one formal and maybe the second one was an informal. And on that basis, the basis of that formal and informal observation, there was a plan of improvement or a plan of growth.
Need one more formal.
Okay. That's thank you for clarifying that, because I think the district's proposal on that point recognizes that is the association's position. That is that 2 formals are required for a plan of growth or improvement. So just wanted to make sure I understood that, the intent there. And then the final question I have, and there, I think there will be some questions from others on the ASD team on this one, but in the final paragraph, paragraph I had a couple questions, and this is just from my working with the evaluation committee, and I wonder if you could tell me what the criteria are or the selection process is for selection of those members of the AEA evaluation committee.
So the process is an interview process. So a questionnaire is sent out, and that evaluation committee tries to have some that are, you know, elementary, some middle school, some high school, people obviously that are excellent teachers, that have an interest in the evaluation process in terms of improving instruction. So anyway, there's evaluation, they fill out a form, then there is an interview process, and then ultimately, I believe, the president approves that selection.
But they're not all AEA members, right?
On the evaluation committee, they are all AEA members with the exception of including Aaron, who runs the coach program.
And I think at times the retired AEA educators, is that correct?
Yeah,
okay.
That's true.
No offense, Brian. Just wanted to understand that process. Thank you. And then
There isn't much about being retired that offends me.
good point. Yeah. I guess my second question about that that final paragraph there, paragraph I, is I guess again, kind of an intent question. What is the intent for including that language, being that it is an addition to the current contract language? And I'm referencing the final sentence in particular.
I think the intent was just like all the other meetings that we have, you know, where we meet with the SPED committee and everything. It's just an intent that we have those meetings. We don't need to meet for the sake of meeting, but sometimes there are things that, you know, issues or things that need to be addressed. And we do have the SPED committee in there for the same reason, so that we can resolve things at the lowest level, not have to wait till bargaining. So we meet monthly with ASD on SPED issues. So same thing here. We just want to make sure that meetings happen.
Thank you. Those are the questions I have for now. I think, Dan, did you have questions?
I just had a moment about the evaluation committee. Is there an ASD administrator in any way involved in the evaluation committee?
On the evaluation committee, it's the AEA committee, and then they always meet with an ASD administrator when they want to make changes to the seat or whatever. So, you know, went way back to, trying to think of her name. Anyway, and then it was Todd Hess for a while, and Teresa Johnson, Rob Boyer, Todd Hess, And then Mike Graham was the last one for a while. Yep.
So central office folks only, but
Correct.
the preamble piece to the seed where we make reference to collaboratively working with administration, that's not building administration or folks involved in the evaluative process
Correct. Central
from
office.
ASD. It's central office
Yep.
only, so, okay. Thank you.
Yep. What? What?
So I think that's all the questions I have. Any other questions from the ASD side of the table about AEA's 464? Not seeing any. In reference to, Brian, I think you did note that we also, the ASD team has a proposal on 464, not prepared to discuss that at this time, but we'll take, yeah.
And this, mostly, I think, Debbie, just goes back to what you were describing. When you started talking about it, you used the word evaluated, then we talked about whether it was an observation. The language on the document is evaluated. Is the intent that that stays, no member will be evaluated, or is it no member will be observed from your intent as a group, just so I understand?
Where are you looking?
The very, A, the added sentence in A.
I think the intent is we don't want people total final evaluation negatively impacted by being observed in an area that's not their content, if that's what your question was.
So then for the proposal's purposes, this should read, no member will be observed in an area? I mean, it's a distinction that
Yeah.
often is a problem, so I'm just trying to make sure I
Yeah.
understand what you're.
I would say so.
I believe so.
So.
Okay,
yes.
so then a follow-up to that, if you would, please. Formal observations happen at mutually agreed times, locations, subjects. So how would it be possible that an observation that placed someone in a jeopardy-based or concern-based situation was in an area where they weren't certified?
It might not be for a formal, but it definitely could be for an informal, when the administrator just pops in anytime.
Right, but just to make sure I'm clear, the position of the association is that 2 formals would be required to put someone in a position of jeopardy or concern.
Oh,
Is
I
that
see
right?
what you're saying. Yep.
Thank you.
Yeah, as I started to say, the ASD team does have a proposal on 464, but we're not prepared to talk through that right now. So I don't know if this is a good time for a caucus. And we can consider these 2. And you had mentioned earlier that ASD is holding 404 and 506. We can take a look at those. Does the association intend to have a counter to 423, or do you know?
The association intends to work in that direction.
Okay. So, would it be, you mentioned short notice on 601 and 605. Did you not want to address those today?
I mean, you know, we set the agenda the day before, and as much as anything, I guess, if there's going to be any reason for doing that, it'd be nice to stick with what we say we're going to do. You know, given a couple hours notice, these guys are all at work. They don't have any time to go through and look over the sections. I think we'd prefer to hold off.
Okay. Well, and this isn't to try to pick a fight, but in fairness, we understood that the association's intent for yesterday was 419, 421. We didn't do that. So, I mean, I think things change, is my point. This wasn't
Right.
intentional. It was a change in
I guess the
approach.
distinction I would make there is that I don't believe we opened any new articles that you hadn't been given a heads up on, though, right? Nothing new was opened that you weren't made aware of.
I'd have
yesterday?
to look at my notes, but the point is we were prepared to address those articles, and
Mhm.
and that wasn't where we went, and that I understand that. I didn't ask the reasons why, and I don't
Okay.
need to know.
Maybe, well, okay, fine.
But either way, I just want to know what we should be thinking about when we return from a break, whether if the intent is that AEA prefers not to engage in discussion on those articles, then we can focus our attention elsewhere, or we can open them up. Because I think we're going to have some time, is my thought.
I would make the priority working on 463 and 404, 506,
Okay.
and then I don't know, talk us into 601 or something later, I guess. But
Okay, that helps. We're going to need some time then, so we'll return at, it's 5:23 now, return at 6 o'clock.
okay, see you at 6.
Thank you.
Thank you. .404 and 506. I smell toast.
good to go?
Yeah, we're back. Thanks for giving us the extra time. Regrettably, we're still not quite there on our language on emergency closure, 423, but we think we're very close. We just need to look it over a little bit. So
Okay.
I don't think we're going to be able to get anything tonight, but would absolutely expect to have a finished product on next Wednesday.
Okay. Well, we had a productive little bit in our caucus and are able to come back with counters on both 404 and 506. Let's start with 404.
Thank you.
Everybody get a copy? Yes, or almost. So 404 was a proposal originally from the district. There was a counter from AEA, and this new proposal from the district is to return to book. The district explained the interest in the language that was struck in the initial proposal, but also understand the association's interest. Appreciate that conversation and discussion around the article. The return proposal from the association was fairly close to book, but the district's preference, given where we are now, is to propose that we return to book on Article 404. And I believe the association's initial proposal was book.
Okay, good.
Questions about anything on that?
Yep. So we're there on 404 and
506?
Yep.
So 506 negotiations. This is kind of the reverse of the last article we talked about, insofar as the association had interest in proposing additional language. We had discussion about that, and the district's initial proposal was book, and the district counter to the association's proposal is also book.
understood. We may have to talk amongst ourselves about that, but we understand your thought. So we can sign 404, and I can't commit to 506 without speaking to the group.
Okay, thank you. We also had a chance to begin discussions around 463 and 464, but similar to, sounds like with what you described on 423, we need some more time to sort through those responses. I don't have a firm sense of when those responses will come back, but we have in our proposal book on 463 some changes in 464 which we'd want to discuss at the time we bring that back.
So 463.
463 initial proposal
want
was,
some information, or
excuse me?
you feel like we're close on 463 and you just want some information?
No,
Or is
no, I don't think we're close. I think we need to decide. Our initial position is book language, and we'll work on a response
Okay.
on that.
Okay.
And I believe those were the articles, the two, 463 and 464 we're holding, and the other two have been presented now.
Sure. So, pardon? Yeah, if we could have a few minutes to talk over 506, and then we have a list of articles that we could pare down or keep the whole list, whatever, kind of what we feel like are sort of the next articles in the queue to open up when we see each other next week. And then also, so if maybe while we're hacking out in 506, you could think about an article or two for next week, and also you might check. I think we kind of tentatively have 4 dates remaining that are scheduled, but there's some concern about the I believe it's Wednesday the 12th. That's the service high school graduation, and that might be tough for some of our members to make it that night. So we might. I think we're wondering whether we should call that one off. So you might.
That's
think about that.
acceptable to us. If do you want to do that now?
If you have the. Yeah, I mean. Yes. Mike just said it was okay. Yeah. Yeah. Well,
I'm
it's,
guessing you, Nick, you probably plan to be at service, I would guess, then.
yeah. So if it might be good to.
Yeah, we'll
Take
go
a
ahead
while.
and remove that one. We do have, to that point, this room for the 5th and 6th next week. I had just confirmed during the caucus, so.
I don't know if you've looked at dates out past the.
We have not,
The
other than
13th,
what
but,
was originally calendared.
Sooner or later, we probably ought to try to find a day or two somewhere in there, but which obviously gets tougher and tougher. But
Is it, I mean, it might be worth at least a quick sense of, I mean, is it the intention of the AEA bargaining team to bargain during the summer or not?
yes.
Okay.
Maybe not with the frequency we've been.
Okay. Yeah, absolutely. We can engage in that and get some more dates on the calendar. As a kind of a concept, as we're looking as a team, is it a particular day of the week work best, or we just don't know?
I mean, our quick conversation we've had, it's gonna be sort of tough regardless. But
Okay.
I don't think we settled on anything that was a obvious better day or.
I'm gonna guess Mondays and Fridays are not gonna be good.
Okay.
Just
Yeah.
a hunch.
Yeah. So maybe Heidi and I could exchange. I could sort of canvass the team, and we could exchange some possible dates. See which
Even
ones.
if we could, if you guys could kind of try to find few days, whatever, and we'll try to find some days, and
Okay.
maybe next Wednesday, Thursday, we can discuss it a bit more.
Okay, that works. You wanted to take a few minutes now?
Yeah, please. I don't know. Yeah, Matt, maybe
there.
Maybe 5 minutes.
Okay.
Thank you. Thank you.
Oh. I almost made one for lunch today.
Okay, so we looked over, talked over 506, and we're in agreement on 506. We're in agreement on 504, or sorry, 404. They've both been signed, and we're done there. So it was good. Yep, getting her done.
All right, and the other topic was districts' proposals for next week. We would just bring forward 601 and 605, which we had prepared for this evening, and we'll be ready for those next Wednesday.
What were those numbers again?
601, 605. Let's I don't know. Let's hey, Matt.
Yes.
Going through 601 right now, I don't think would be appropriate. Michaela's not here, and I think that'd be of particular interest to her. But if you want to talk about 605, you know, we have a little bit of time, or you can call it either way.
Why don't we call it, because we could use the next, we just had a few minutes there to meet. We just actually were out here. We could use the next little bit between now and 7 as a caucus to see if we can bring additional articles. If we can, Brian, I would just email to Heidi
Sure.
what we would add to those 601, 605, fill in the blank.
Okay.
Yeah.
And that's, but that email would get to Heidi.
I would hope
sooner
either
than
later this evening or tomorrow,
Oh, yeah, that's fine.
once we make that decision.
Sure. Okay, great. Thank you. And then maybe we'll take a minute or two. We've got 5 articles that we're looking at. Maybe we should pare that list down. Yeah, well, same thing. I guess we'll sort out amongst ourselves what the next couple articles will be, and if we don't see it, Heidi can email us to you.
Okay, that works.
So,
Right.
so we're done for this evening.
I think so.
Thank you all for your time.
Thank you.
Have a good weekend.